Hi everyone. I'm going to give a lesson which I think might be the most important in the series of 13 reasons why students underperform. And put quite simply, it's because the education system kind of hides what students are supposed to learn, and consequently students aren't quite sure what they're supposed to be doing. Now, a lot of the talk today is going to be based on the work of a professor called John Hattie. He is a New Zealander who's now resident in Australia, and this professor of education has researched for much of his life the various things which lead to an increase in academic performance amongst students. Now, Professor Hattie has discovered that many things contribute to enhanced academic performance, and so he said it's a bit pointless to look at all of them. Why don't we look at the greatest predictors of academic success? And for time constraints, I'm deliberately going to focus on the two greatest predictors of success, the first of which I can deal with very quickly. The greatest predictor of academic success, Professor Hattie has found, is if a student makes a real, meaningful, deep connection with the teacher. I imagine a number of you who are watching this will have had that experience. There's a teacher who cares about you, you like them, you click, you get them, they get you, and the whole subject in the world changes as a result. I also know some of you are watching thinking, I had absolutely no idea that it was possible for that to happen in class, but any of you who've had a total change in a subject, it's usually because of that connection with the teacher. But of course, here's the problem. You can't control that to such an extent. I had some teachers in high school, even a couple of professors at university, with whom I was never going to have a meaningful, deep connection. I didn't like them, and I'm pretty sure that they didn't like me either. So there's not too much that you can do to manufacture that greatest predictor of success. And consequently, Professor Hattie focuses on the second greatest predictor of academic success. And that is what he calls visible learning. Remember I said that often the education department or the education system or the teacher or the textbook will hide what one is supposed to be learning? Professor Hattie says that what you should be doing as an educator is making things as explicit as possible, making the learning process visible to a student, not invisible, but completely clear and explicitly visible so that students know, I need to learn A, B, C, D. I'm going to give a really good example. A few months ago, I started taking a young child for swimming lessons. And you can imagine that when this child now approaches the swimming pool and is a bit nervous looking at water, knowing that soon he's got to be jumping into the water and so on, that it wasn't a decent strategy for the teacher to suddenly say, okay, swim, jump in and swim now. That's clearly not the way that the teacher went about things, because that wouldn't have produced very good results. Instead, the teacher broke up the learning process into really clear, explicit steps to make them visible for this child. So she'd say, don't worry, you're not even going to get in the pool at first. Our first step is just for you to do this with your cheeks. Can you do that with your cheeks? Good boy, you got that right. Now that you can do that with your cheeks, I want you to see if you can hold that air in and hold your breath. That's what we're doing. And I'm going to put my hand under your nose to make sure that I'm not feeling any breath. Oh, you clever boy, that's step 2. Now that we can do that, step 3 is to put your face in a bit of water and make sure no air comes out. Step 4 is to blow bubbles. Step 11 is we're finally getting in the water. Step 25, we're doing this with our hands. Step 723, you're beating Michael Phelps in the Olympics. In other words, instead of her throwing too much and overwhelming the child, she always broke up what he needed to learn in such a way that he was constantly conscious of where he was in the learning process, what he needed to do next, and consequently always had one thing that he needed to do. And as a result, he learned much faster. Now, I actually think that is the single best example of visible learning that I've personally come across. The teacher made it absolutely clear what needed to be learned so that the student could simply get it next bit and the next bit and the next bit. So a lot of the advice today is basically that you, the student, need to make sure that you are totally aware of how much you know, what you have to learn next, and keep your learning visible so you can see what it is that you're needing to grasp. And of course, I know what you're thinking. How? I don't have a wonderful swimming instructor for my economics or my geography or my socio-political theory about Southeast Asia as a consequence of the pandemic. How on earth am I going to make my learning process explicit? And so I'm going to give you the most reliable, simple bit of advice to increase your results. In almost all academic textbooks, at the beginning of the chapter, you will find a table which is usually called something like learning outcomes, or study aims, or learning objectives. Study aims and objectives. By the end of the chapter, the student should be able to. I often describe it in the following way. Students know what section I'm talking about because it's the one where they go, "Oh, thank heaven, something I don't need to read," and turn the page over. It's the most important page in the book because they're making the learning outcome visible. They're no longer hiding what it is that you need to know. They're saying, look, you've got a 20-page chapter, but actually there are 8 ideas that you really need to know. You need to know what organs are involved in digestion. You need to know how the digestive process occurs. You need to understand the function that enzymes play in this whole process, and so on. So what you must do, all students watching this, for all of your subjects, and you must do it very dutifully, whenever you're given a list of those learning outcomes, or by the end of the chapter the student should be able to, you turn them into questions, and then you get the perfect answers to those questions, and you memorize them. Turn into questions, get perfect answer, memorize. So, for instance, if it says by the end of the chapter you must know the different organs involved in digestion, turn it into a question. What organs are involved in digestion? And then you go and get the perfect answer. The tongue with associated salivary glands, the pharynx, then the esophagus, and then the stomach, the large intestine, the small intestine. You go and get the perfect answer, and you memorize that. How do the organs perform this role? And you go and get the perfect answer, whether it is a single word or whether it is an entire essay. Because that drills down to what is most key and most important, instead of you wasting too much time with a lot of the frivolous stuff. Now, although that's one very simple bit of advice, I'm telling people watching this, if you follow that one bit religiously, not kind of sort of do it religiously, you will find that your study time goes down and yet your results go up. And I'm saying this because I know that a lot of students out there who have been deprived of class time are thinking, how on earth am I going to ace these exams that are coming in only a couple of weeks, or if you're lucky, a couple of months' time? There's an awful lot of advice which I can give, but if you follow only that one bit of advice, it's going to help you. Now, that being said, I'm just going to give you a few asides. One, as I've said in another part of this series, please, if you don't know the meaning of keywords, you do have to look it up. That's not sexy advice, but it's necessary. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to understand the core concepts which are being explained to you. That's the first. Here's the other thing, which I should mention, and that is that getting that key information and memorizing that key information is obviously what I really specialize in. And I'm going to be quite direct. How do I do that? I train how you can read very rapidly, what people would commonly call speed reading. That allows you to read literally thousands of words a minute. I imagine some of you thinking that's absolutely not possible. I've been video recorded doing that dozens of times. I do it in demonstrations around the world all the time. It is absolutely possible. In fact, when I teach speed reading, the actual statistic is that more than 95% of people read at least double their original speed within a single day. The actual stats are about 97.8%, but I say over 95, just to be conservative. Some people have thought it been absolutely incredible. For instance, I taught a granddaughter of a Nobel Prize winner years ago who was reading 8,000 words a minute after 1 hour. She clearly got some of her granddaddy's genes going on. So the point is, Speed reading really is absolutely extraordinary, and it allows you to get through work very fast. So in terms of getting the answers to those study aims, the speed reading is an incredibly valuable thing, which I don't give away free. All these videos will give you a lot of cool content, but I don't give that away free because that's a lot of my bread and butter. Well, let's say that's the bread. The butter is the memory techniques which I teach. So I specialize in visual memory techniques because not only do you get the information, but if you can remember thousands of bits of information with ease, you suddenly have a really formidable combination because you can do the work in less time than the people with whom you're competing, and you can actually recall it in a way that none of them can. So of course you become an excellent student. So I don't give away the speed reading or the visual memory techniques to any depth free. If you are interested in learning those properly, of course you can enroll for my course, and there's a couple of good bits of news attached to this. The first thing is that I'm much more competitively priced than most of my competitors, despite the fact that I'm a psychologist qualified at the University of Oxford and literally one of the most respected people in the world doing the kind of thing that I do. I don't charge as much as most of my competitors, so I think you'll be pleasantly surprised if you go to easycheater.com that it is actually relatively affordable, and you've got different options you can take. You can opt for either online classes with other students and my facilitating those. You can also do a course where you basically learn all of the content just by watching videos in your own time, and you can also book private classes. Now, here's the really good news. I have lived in a number of places around the world, but I've lived in South Africa now for a huge portion of my life, including the last 11 years. I'm currently resident in Cape Town, and I'm aware that the pandemic has affected an awful lot of countries, and South Africa particularly strongly. The timing has been kind of devastating educationally, and so here is an offer that I have to any South Africans who are watching this. If you are interested in either enrolling for the videos online or in joining one of the group classes with me, if you're South African, it's half price. The price that you see online, halve it if you're South African. That's an offer which I would like to give as a means of helping those of you out there who would like to make the most of this really difficult time and make sure that you still get the kind of results which you would like at the end of this academic year. Okay, so everyone, in a nutshell, I would say that one of the reasons people underperform academically is because their learning process is made hidden or invisible. How do you fix that? You make it visible and you try and find the key information. Usually there will be an indication of that key information in the study aims and objectives at the beginning of a chapter. And as a side note, if there aren't study aims and objectives, the next most useful thing that you can do is pay attention to the headings and pay attention to the tables of content at the beginning of the chapter and use them in the same way as you would use study aims and objectives by turning them into questions, getting the perfect answers and memorizing those perfect answers. I hope that this helps all of you to make the most of this time academically, and if you are interested in registering for one of my classes, just go to easycheater.com. My contact details are there as well, so you can get in touch so that I can help you as much as possible. Thank you everyone, have a great day.